and the building density, building constructed of unreinforced masonry here on this seismic zoning map, the results will be very interesting. So here, the circles are drawn, various circles you can see of different color, different sizes. So colors of the circle, they indicate the population density, and the size of the circle, they indicate the density of unreinforced masonry buildings in India, in different parts of the country. So the here you can see the red circles, they have population of 1000 million or more, and so on and so forth. The bigger the circle means bigger is the density of the unreinforced masonry building. So you can see in these regions which are of high seismic hazard, you have bigger circles. Moreover, these are the regions where you have higher population as well as higher density of unreinforced masonry. So that is the problem. So what is the problem with unreinforced masonry? As the name suggests, there is no reinforcement. So whenever there is bending, there is tension, there is flexure in the members, we will of course have failures, as we have seen in past earthquakes. So the huge stock of unreinforced masonry in populous regions with high seismicity, that creates a very high seismic risk, and particularly in Indian scenario. So on the basis of that, we have considered 4 building types. So this is the first building type that we are considering, that is masonry infilled RC frame buildings. So this is most commonly constructed, this type of building, in urban areas. So I'm sure in Jabalpur itself you will have thousands of such buildings, lakhs of such buildings, because it is I mean it is the building that we know of actually. You have reinforced concrete buildings, and if you don't have infills, then there is no use of those buildings. So this is one very popular building type that we are considering here. The second building type that is considered in this study is unreinforced masonry buildings. Now, some of you may not have seen unreinforced masonry building, but then these are very popularly constructed in rural India. Like I already said, about 80% of buildings in India are still constructed using unreinforced masonry. So these are so popular. First, they are very economical. Second, people think that engineers are not required. I mean, the house owners themselves, with the help of some laborers, they can construct these houses. So in rural areas, you will find almost every building constructed of this. The photograph that is shown here is a 120 years old building in Port Blair. This is the cellular jail. So you can imagine there is no reinforcement here, but then this building is standing since 120 years. The third building typology considered is the confined masonry buildings. Now this is a combination of the masonry infilled RC frame buildings and the unreinforced masonry buildings. So both have some advantages. So the advantages of both buildings are clubbed here, and the new building type has been defined, which is confined masonry buildings. Now in India, people have already been constructing such types of buildings since many years, but then without realizing that these are confined masonry buildings. So the last part is the traditional building typology. So we thought maybe one building type which has been constructed in India since several hundreds of years, that we should consider. So this is one building type that we considered. So there are many traditional building types in India. The top figure here, it shows Assam type houses. So these are also called Ikra houses. Now this is primarily a wooden building type. Most of the members are wooden, all the frame members are wooden. So you may ask, where is the masonry wall then? So the masonry wall is present below the sill level only. There is no masonry wall above the sill level, but then there is another type of wall above the sill level. So that you can see here, all the levels are filled actually. So these walls, they are not masonry walls, but these are Ikra walls. Now these Ikra walls are actually the bamboo shoots. So they cut the bamboo into smaller pieces, long pieces, but having smaller section, slender. So these are bamboo shoots, and then these bamboo shoots are interwoven like a sweater, and they are provided in between these wooden frames. and plastered on both the sides. So it becomes very flexible material. It is also very lightweight compared to the masonry walls. So because of this, the total mass of these buildings is very less. And those of you understand earthquake engineering, they will know that when the mass is less, you will have lesser earthquake force, because the force is actually mass times acceleration, and the ground motion actually imparts acceleration to the structure. Ground motion is nothing but acceleration. So during earthquakes, wherever you have masses concentrated, you have acceleration concentrated in those regions. You have forces. So these buildings, by their own virtue, or by their own characteristics, they attract lesser earthquake forces. And this is perhaps the reason that in history, none of these buildings, in more than 200 years of their existence, none of these buildings have suffered damage because of earthquakes. There are damages because of fire, because of landslides, many other reasons, but not because of direct earthquake. Other type of traditional building type commonly constructed in India is Dhaji Diwari, which is basically again timber laced masonry. So here you have all the walls constructed of masonry, but then in between you can see the timber members are there. Wherever they feel, they provide timber. So this is again unengineered, non-engineered construction. Nobody tells them how to construct them, but because of from their own experiences, they provide this timber lacing in the masonry. So they believe that the timber lacing, they confine the masonry walls, and that is true, because in the Kashmir earthquake, we have observed that many reinforced concrete buildings collapsed, but such buildings, Dhaji Diwari buildings, they suffered damage, but there was no collapse in these buildings. Similarly, Tak is another traditional building type, again in Kashmir region. Here also we embed timber logs in thick walls. So you may not see here, but some places you can see the timber logs. So it is very informal construction. They simply put timber logs at various places, and these walls are very thick. A lot of mud is used here. A lot of big stones may be used here. So these are some of the traditional building types, and we will consider the first Assam type house in the present study. Again, let me tell you that there is no design code, there is no method of analysis for these types of buildings in India. They have been in construction since more than 200 years, but there is no formal design guidelines. There is no technical document on these buildings. So when I joined IIT Guwahati in 2007, I thought that let us do some study on Assam type houses, and my technical work is the first technical work on these building types in India, and that is very highly cited. So let us see what is the influence of masonry. Why we considered masonry as the only parameter on the basis of which we selected the 4 building types. We have observed that the presence of masonry, it changes the building response during earthquakes. Now, why is it so? It is the reasons are many, but before that, I will tell you what are the problems. There are many stakeholders in building construction, and mostly we don't actually realize, we don't recognize that the masonry is a structural member. So we use masonry in a rampant, uncontrolled and unplanned manner, like you have seen the figure in the second slide. That figure, I forgot to tell you, it is from Gangtok, Sikkim. So because of negligence, we treat masonry as non-structural element. And generally, when we analyze the building, we have certain things in our mind. So we analyze this, we design this building. From the design force resultants, we design something else, and finally when we construct these buildings in on real site, we construct something else. So there is a tremendous difference between what we analyze in our computers and what we construct in the field. So that is the whole problem. So because of this, there is this very high seismic vulnerability in some of these building types. The primary reason is masonry governs the lateral load response of the building. Now let us see why I'm saying this. why masonry governs the lateral load response. So uh, we can very easily understand that if we have unreinforced masonry in which there are no reinforced concrete columns and beams, then we can understand that masonry resists all types of load. So of course it will control the behavior. But then in case of reinforced concrete buildings, when we provide masonry as only infill, why should infill control the behavior? Now that is because of severe irregularities because of presence of these masonry walls. So let us consider one example. We have this multi-story building, 10-story, 8-story building, and you can see there are two parts of the same building. So on the left part, the masonry infill is not provided in the ground floor. On the right part, masonry infill is provided in all the floors. So this is a reinforced concrete building. In Jabalpur, these types of buildings are very commonly constructed. In fact, in 1997, some of you may remember that there was an earthquake in Jabalpur, near Jabalpur. And that is the earthquake responsible for initiation of research on masonry infills in India. Because several buildings were damaged, those buildings in which masonry infill walls were not there in the ground floor. So 1997 Jabalpur earthquake actually is responsible for the beginning of research in India on infill walls. So you can see the two types of provision of masonry infill in the same building cluster. And let us see what will happen when I apply earthquake load, an equivalent earthquake load at the top of this building. So this is kind of, I'm pushing this building on one side, and then I'm checking how these buildings are going to deform under these lateral loads. So this is where I'll plot the typical deformation profile for these buildings. Let us say, first I assume that there is no masonry infill wall in any of the story. It is entirely bare. Only the beams and columns are there. So if that is the case, if we treat this building as a bare frame building, then this will be the deformation profile, the rate curve. Now you can see how gradually the deformation is increasing from bottom to top. And when we analyze, when we design these buildings for earthquake loads, we are very much interested in finding out what is the lateral drift. So in this case, if you compare the lateral drift, the interstory lateral drift in different floors, you will find that it is very gradual. There is not much difference in the interstory lateral drift of different floors when the frame is bare. So because of this, the design of these buildings is very simple, and we don't expect much damage in these buildings because there is no irregularity. Now in the second case, if I consider that the masonry infill wall is provided in all the floors, like the building on the right side. So if the infill is provided on all the floors, we can very easily imagine that the stiffness of the building will increase, because when you provide infill in an RC frame, it enhances its stiffness, lateral stiffness. So because of increase in the stiffness, the lateral deformation will reduce. So this purple color line here, it shows the typical deformation profile for fully infilled frame building. Now you can see that the lateral displacement, the maximum displacement at the top of the building reduced drastically, because now you have masonry infills inside the RC frame, which actually reduces the lateral load displacement, the lateral displacement of the building. And again, you see the interstory drift, the relative displacement between different stories is again very gradually changing from bottom to top. So interstory drift, you will not have much difference in different floors. And this is what we want actually in design. Therefore, our design again becomes simplified in such a case. Now the most important case, where we have masonry infill walls in all the stories, but we don't have masonry wall in the ground floor. So in all stories except the ground story. So these are open ground story buildings. So the ground floor, open ground floor is used for parking purposes. So if that is the case, this is the deformation profile of open ground story or open first story building frame. So you can see here it's a very typical deformation profile of such buildings, you can see that most of the lateral deformation is accumulated in the ground floor or the first floor only, right? So where you don't have masonry infill wall, the lateral deformation will be accumulated in that floor, most of the lateral deformation. And if you go from the first floor top to the roof, you don't have much deformation, almost negligible deformation from that level to the top level. So you can very well imagine that what will happen to the ground floor in such a case. Obviously, you have huge ductility demand in the columns of the open ground floor columns, in the open ground story columns. And of course, you will have failure in these columns. But if you have fully infilled wall, you will have some damage in the masonry infill in the ground floor, but you can actually avoid the failure in the columns, or you can avoid the collapse of the building. So here you can actually very easily see that what is the influence of providing masonry walls in the building. And that is the reason why we chose masonry as the important parameters to shortlist 4 building types. So this is the practical example. One earthquake was there in Turkey 1999 in a place called Kocaeli. It was a pretty big earthquake, and you can see what happened to the ground floor columns. And the upper floors, they are almost vertical. So this is whatever I discussed in the previous slide is not only a story, but it is a reality. Here it is very easily seen that a lot of damage occurred to the ground floor. But since the building was not fully constructed, it was under construction, it did not collapse completely because all the loads were not there. But you can see the building adjacent to that. You can just see the collapsed part of the building. That was completed, and very similar building, it collapsed completely because the mass was more in that building, almost an identical building. Now, if we still consider masonry as non-structural element, there will be severe irregularities. And this first S here, it stands for structural engineer. So no structural engineer can design the open ground story buildings or the open first story buildings because it is very difficult. There are procedures available, but it's highly uneconomical and difficult. And there's no question that we can depend on the second S, which is the Superman, to save these types of buildings. So this is a cartoon developed by some students. There was an annual graphics competition. So neither Superman nor structural engineers can save such buildings if not designed properly. And we have many more problems if we don't use masonry properly. So if we treat masonry as non-structural, we can have different types of irregularities. So you can see the first figure, some collapse of the infill wall. We provide infill in different types, different floors. There is no symmetry in different height. So that all creates problems. You can see this photograph here where you have intermediate story which was left open because the building the contractor or the owner, he could sell the 5 stories, but he could not sell this story to anybody. So it was left open, and we have found many times that these intermediate floors also can collapse during earthquakes, like it is shown here. So whenever you have some irregularity, you have some problem. And of course, we have always problems with architects versus engineers. So architects wants to construct some types of buildings, but then it's up to the engineers, up to us, how we actually incorporate those types of irregularity in the real building construction. So we have many cases where masonry is actually responsible to damage the structure. So this is a perfect example after an earthquake in Sumatra. So this building was located about 1100 kilometers away from the epicenter of Sumatra earthquake in 2004. So the columns were very weak in this case. So when the masonry was resisting the lateral load, it damaged the column. And while the masonry infill collapsed, the column was also damaged. So this is another peculiar problem if we are not careful. Now, why we don't consider masonry in our design. One problem is masonry is a material which has many characteristics in different under different loads in different directions. So we need to have a lot of material properties, which is important actually to evaluate, to analyze and design these structures, considering influence of masonry for assessment of the capacity of structures. So we can have masonry infilled RC frames, unreinforced masonry, confined masonry, whatever, but we need many properties of masonry. Sometimes it is not easy. Some of these tests you may have already known. So if you consider the unit properties, the properties of the bricks only. So we have physical properties like water absorption, initial rate of absorption. Then we have mechanical properties of bricks. So we have the compressive strength and modulus of elasticity of single bricks. We have split tensile strength of single bricks. And then there are tests on mortar. So compressive strength of mortar cubes, the modulus of elasticity of mortar cubes, then the flexural strength of mortar and split cylinder strength of mortar. So these are the tests which we have to carry out to know what are the compressive and tensile strength of brick as well as mortar individually. But then unless we carry out tests on masonry, not on individual units, but on masonry, we will not be able to design this structure. So a test is there to find out the compressive strength of masonry prisms. That test will also give us the modulus of elasticity value. Then there are tests for tension bond strength, initial shear strength. So this is a Z-shaped specimen for tension bond strength, and the triplet test for the initial shear strength. And we also have tests for diagonal compression test. This also gives us the shear strength and shear modulus. So these are various types of tests that one has to carry out. But if you go to any design office or on site, you will find that in 100% of the cases, you will have tests on bricks. Sometimes you have tests on mortar, but none of the places you will find any of these tests carried out. So nobody does tests on masonry prisms, and forget about tension bond strength and shear strength. That is not commonly done, but we know what is the brick strength in different parts of country. So let us see a very interesting figure where you will get to know what is the variation in the compressive strength of bricks in India. Now this is a huge problem, because the variation decides what types of design codes you'll be having and why we don't have very updated design codes in India. So if I show you the variation, you will be surprised to know that the minimum versus maximum uh, strength, compressive strength of individual single bricks varies from 2.5 MPa to 40 MPa. Right? So this is huge variation, almost 15 times, 20 times variation between the minimum and the maximum value of the brick strength. So let us see what is the variation. So here you find two bars for different states of India, different regions, and the two bar shows maximum value versus minimum value in those regions. And in case of Jabalpur in MP, you can find that the strength will be very low. Since some of you are already there, I'll be interested to know how, if you have tested single brick units, what are the values that you get, both maximum and minimum. So this is the variation. So low brick strength is actually there in southern part of India, in MP, Chhattisgarh, this region. And if you come here, so this region here gives you the maximum compressive strength of brick. Okay, so this is Manipur. In Manipur, the quality of clay and the manufacturing, the quality of the manufacturing units is in such a good condition that we get easily 40 MPa bricks in this region. So now you can imagine that you have to design these buildings considering such a huge variation of masonry strength. which is not easy actually. Now, this is not, the story is not complete here, because bricks are not the only constituent in masonry. So we have to combine bricks with mortar to get masonry. So I'm again showing you the same figure here. Again, in different regions, you have minimum versus maximum compressive strength of bricks. So the variation, like I said, is from 2.5 MPa to 40 MPa. And if I superimpose on this figure the compressive strength of mortar that we generally use in our design or in construction, then we get this figure. So I'm considering here 5 different grades of mortar, ranging from 6 MPa compressive strength to 25 MPa compressive strength. So this is the range that we use in India. Okay, now this data is actually obtained from published research or papers or newspaper articles. So what will happen if I combine these bricks with minimum and maximum values of compressive strength with the compressive strength of this strength mortar? That is the big question. So then, in order to answer some of these questions, what we did, we considered these 4 building types in which the masonry was used in a different manner to satisfy different functions. So RC frame buildings, load bearing unreinforced masonry buildings, confined masonry buildings, and Assam type houses. So let us see how these buildings perform in a laboratory setup. So RC frame buildings, they are most common building typologies in urban areas. Generally, they are infilled with masonry using various locally available materials. Nowadays, many different types of bricks are actually being manufactured. So we use anything that is available. The sizes are different. Initially, what we used to have about 10-15 years back, 20 years back, was only one size of brick, the burnt clay, red bricks that are available, that were available. But now you have many different types of bricks. And interestingly, most of these new types of bricks, research has not been carried out to find out those important parameters which are actually required for design. So the tests that I showed you for most of these new material, people have not carried out these tests. Now we already know that the presence of infill modifies the lateral load response of the frames in terms of strength, stiffness, and energy dissipation. Let us see these details for these 4 different building types. So we start with the first type of building type, which is RC frame. So we considered a multi-story building, and from that building, we took out one single frame on the ground floor at the bottom of the building. So this is the frame which we considered for the study. And we applied lateral load on this building frame. This is the reinforcement detailing. These are the reinforcement to beams and columns that were considered. The dimensions of the frame are also given there. So there we again consider 3 different buildings here, 3 specimens. First was the bare frame in which there was no masonry infill. Second was the infill frame, the fully infill frame with burnt clay bricks. And the third specimen was having a very small opening in the infill wall. So in order to study what is the influence of infill on bare frame and what is the influence of opening on the infills. So this is one set of tests, 3 tests basically that we carried out. And these are the 3 specimens. So the bare frame, the first frame, infill frame, and infill frame with 10% opening. So this is the test setup, and you can see here that the specimen was actually supported on the strong floor, and the loading was applied on the top here. The loading was applied using servo-controlled hydraulic actuator at the top of the frame, at the slab level. And we used different sensors in order to record the response of the structure. So LVDTs were used, strain gauges were used in several locations. and the loading that was applied here on the top is basically cyclic loading and in increasing magnitudes. So we started with very small lateral displacement of 1 mm, and then we slowly go on increasing. So 3 cycles of 1 mm displacement, and then 3 cycles of 2 mm displacement, 3 mm displacement, 5 mm displacement. So this we carried on until the specimen failed. So I'll show you one video of this frame which was fully infilled, and just try to see how this building, how this frame failed, and how the cracks were initiated during the lateral load application, how the cracks in the infill were propagated into the RC columns. So everything is visible here. Now the test, this is the complete test video. So the actual test, it took around 2.5 hours to 3 hours, but I'm showing here in fast forward manner. So you can see people moving very quickly here and there. And the bottom, you can see there is one board here that shows the level of lateral displacement during the tests. So like I said, we increase the lateral displacement from very low value till failure. And another important point here is these tests were carried out in displacement controlled manner. So generally when we test these brick specimens in lab, we use UTM or CTM, the compression testing machines. So these testing machines are mostly the force controlled machines. So as soon as the force starts reducing, these machines stop. They don't apply load. Once the force, that the force of resistance, it starts dropping. But in this part of the study, in this research, we were interested in knowing what happens after the force starts reducing. What happens to the building? How much additional displacement it can actually have before complete failure. So therefore, we applied displacement control loading, so that we can keep on increasing the displacement and note down what is the load value, rather than go on applying the load value and noting down the displacement. Okay, so when we apply displacement control loading, we can do the test in after the strength is achieved, even during the strength is reducing, the load is reducing. So I'm starting the video here. Just pay attention how the cracks are propagated in the infill first and then into the RC columns. The load will be applied from the top. Now you can see the crack started appearing in the infill wall. Now you can see cracks in the columns. Damage increasing in the infill wall as well as in the columns. So this is about 50-60 mm lateral displacement. Now you can see damage to column at the bottom on both the ends. See, the whole masonry wall failed. But even after failure of this masonry wall, because the columns were ductile, because we had good design, the column were still standing here. The important point to note here is we actually avoided the out of plane failure with the help of these members here. So this member here and this member here, it actually prevents the out of plane movement of the frame. Otherwise, since it's only a frame, it is very weak in the out of plane direction. It may fail there. But the important point to note here is also that the infill wall, even after achieving about 100 mm lateral displacement, it completely failed, but the column was still there. There were hinges, plastic hinges at all 4 locations, at the top and bottom in these columns. The failure was there in the bottom, but still the frame survived the complete collapse. So this is the response that was plotted from the frame, from the test. This is the first frame, that is the bare frame. I have not shown this video here. because I wanted to show the failure of infill to all of you. So I showed this video to all of you. And you can see here that the lateral load that was applied from the actuator is plotted here, and the drift that was measured using the LVDTs is shown here. So, and since the tests were carried out in cyclic manner, so you have these hysteresis loops, and you can see how gradual the lateral load deformation, lateral load drift curve is here. And the red curve, it shows the envelope. So basically the maximum points in every cycle are joined here. So this is the envelope curve, and these are the hysteresis curves. So this is a very nice curve that is expected in case of bare frame. And if you remember the first figure that I showed you, in case of bare frame, we have gradual change in the lateral displacement. So that is what is reflected here. The lateral strength was about 40 kilonewton in both positive and negative direction. The lateral deformability is very high, so it went up to 6% lateral drift, which is huge actually. 6% lateral drift is very good. In case of the infill frame, you can see how the lateral stiffness changes. So you can see the stiffness here. Stiffness is basically the initial part stiffness that we are discussing. The stiffness enhances by about 8 to 10 times as soon as you provide infill bond. And the strength, it reaches almost 100 kilonewton in both positive and negative direction. So here it was about 40, so from 40 to 45 to 100, there's a huge jump in the strength as well as the lateral stiffness. And again, you can see it is not a very gradual failure. Because there are some cracks in the masonry, there is some crack in the RC frame, and some masonry failure. You see there's no gradual failure here, but the failure was quite brittle in nature. And here also you can see it goes on reducing and reducing, though the lateral strength was very high. Now it's up to us actually what type of performance we want, whether we want such type of performance or such type of performance. But the question will be, if we want this type of performance, but then we also want masonry infill, then how to provide? So that is the topic of research that many people are actually doing nowadays. Now let us see what is the influence of this 10% opening that was there in the masonry infill wall. Here now you can see the strength is about maybe 80 kilonewton in both positive and negative direction. So it reduced from 100 to 80, but there is not much change in the lateral deformability. However, you will find that there is a marginal improvement in this behavior. So the brittle failure was avoided to a certain extent, but still at many places you will find that there is a brittle failure. But the overall failure pattern was much better if you have openings in the infill wall. But again, it depends on what type of openings, how big openings you are providing, what is the location of the openings. So I'm just showing you these three frames, but we tested about 20 frames. But I cannot show you all the results in short span of time. So we tested different sizes of openings, different positions of openings, and we get very interesting results. So, like I already discussed, the bare frames, they have symmetrical loops in both push and pull directions, very gradual failure. In infill frames, the loops are distorted. They are unsymmetrical. You can see in the second figure that the failure is not gradual. In infill frames, there is an increase in pinching with increase in drift level. So pinching means we don't have increase in the lateral load, but we simply have increase in the drift. So in the later cycles, you can see here the pinching, right? So for example, this curve here, you will find that the lateral load remains same, but the drift go on increasing. So these are the results for the infill frames, reinforced concrete infill frames. Now let us do the same study, discuss the results of the similar study carried out on unreinforced masonry buildings. So like already discussed that there is a huge concentration of unreinforced masonry buildings in those regions where you have high population density also, and you have higher seismic risk also. So that is very that increases the seismic vulnerability significantly in those regions. So I'll show you one example here. Again, it is from Gangtok, Sikkim. This is a very old building, unreinforced masonry, but there was an earthquake in 1980 and 1988. After these two earthquakes, some damage was there in this building. So before that earthquake, this building was actually the assembly building in Gangtok. After these earthquakes, the assembly building was transferred to somewhere else, and this building was converted to some archive building. So you can see here some bands. These are some steel bands which were actually provided on all the walls of these buildings after 1988 earthquake. So these steel bands, they helped actually this building to perform better during earthquakes. So we'll not consider these bands in this in the present today's discussion, but we also carried out some studies considering the influence of these bands on the lateral load behavior, but that we'll not discuss today. We'll simply consider some part of the building and do some analysis. So again, we consider three specimens. So first is the solid masonry wall. That is model 1. Model 2 had a door opening, masonry wall with door opening. This is a full size wall. So the width of the wall was 3 meters and height of the wall was also 3 meters. This is a full scale wall, and therefore the door size was also normal 1 meter by 2 meters. And the third specimen, model 3, was masonry wall with the central window opening. So these are three specimens that we studied experimentally. And what I'm going to show to you is the video of one of these walls. Now remember the previous figure of RC frame building testing. The test setup was very similar. So what we are doing here is this building, this frame is actually fixed at the bottom. Here you can see some steel members. So it is fixed at the bottom to the strong floor. We constructed RC slab here at the top of this masonry frame, masonry wall, so that we can support the top load. These loads are coming from the upper floor. And we are applying this lateral load using again the servo controlled hydraulic actuator at this level. You can see how we have connected the slab to this servo controlled hydraulic actuator using these plates and then these steel rods. So this arrangement connects the specimen to this member, to this actuator. So this actuator actually is responsible for applying the cyclic loads in a displacement controlled manner at the top of the building. Again it's the cyclic loads where we went on increasing the lateral displacement slowly till failure. And the loads were applied very slowly. Again the test, this test actually did not take much time. And when I start the video, you will not even realize when the wall failed, because it is such a stiff structure, it is such a brittle structure that you cannot see the deformation in the wall. It will simply fail. So just notice how the failure takes place. And I'm not sure how many of you have seen such a testing before, how these walls fail. But a little understanding of structural engineering will tell you that because we are applying load at the top of this wall, the maximum flexure is occurring here. So we must have failure at the bottom of the wall. But there are many other important parameters which come into play as soon as we apply the lateral load. One important parameter is the axial load acting on the wall. So if we have very high axial load acting on the wall, sometimes we don't get failure at the bottom. Now the reason that we considered this door opening is to understand how the failure take place because of this door. Because it is a very well known fact that wherever you have opening, you will have formation of diagonal cracks, because there is a huge concentration of stresses here at all these corners. So we always find some diagonal cracks originating from this level. So let us see how this wall behaved during the lateral loading. So because of movement of people, you can understand that the test is under progress, but you cannot see any deformation. Now you can see the movement of the actuator at the top. And then suddenly we have this type of failure. So like I said, because of presence of the door opening, we have these cracks, these diagonal cracks originating from the top of these openings on both the sides, as well as there were cracks at the bottom. But that is of course expected. This is very interesting in any of these masonry walls, not only URM, but even if you have RC frames with masonry infill walls, you will always find such cracks near the opening, at the top of the opening, as well as at the bottom of the opening. So this is because of huge stress concentration in that region. Now let us see the lateral load deformation curves for this specimen. So the model 1, which was the solid wall without any opening, you can see the lateral strength was about 25 to 28 MPa. Now obviously the strength is not same in both positive and negative directions, because as soon as the load was applied on the specimen, there was some damage, and in the negative direction, because of this damage, the strength could not go up to that level in the opposite direction. And you can see here how much is the lateral displacement. Now the lateral displacement achieved in case of RC frame with infill, the previous set of tests, was about 100 mm, and the strength was also, if you consider the infill frame, the strength was also 100 kilonewton. But in this case, the lateral displacement at which the failure took place was only about 9 mm, and the strength is only about 25 to 28 MP, 25 to 28 kilonewton. If you consider the door opening, obviously you will find that the displacement further reduces. It is only 6 mm here and about 6 to 7 mm in the other direction. The strength also is reduced to about 20 kilonewton. If you consider the window opening, the strength as well as the lateral deformation, it increases. Now that is because you have a reinforced concrete lintel at the top of this door opening. Okay, so basically because of presence of that lintel, you have a better performance from this wall, from the solid wall. Here there is no lintel anywhere. So, but I mean, if you compare these three models, the maximum strength is only about 28 kilonewton, right? And the displacement about 10 to 12 mm. That is very low compared to RC frame. So reinforcement application, reinforcement provision actually helps in both the increase in strength and gaining in the lateral deformability and ductility. So these are, you can see, you cannot actually see those good loops that were there in case of the RC frame. These are very extended, elongated loops, right? So the performance is very poor, is extremely poor, and this is perhaps the reason why we have huge failure, huge number of buildings that failed during past earthquakes. So these buildings performed quite poorly during past earthquakes. And not only in India, you have such building collapses in Iran, in Italy, in New Zealand, any country that have unreinforced masonry buildings, and they have even a moderate earthquake, you have hundreds and thousands of such buildings collapsing. Even in developing countries, in developed countries, anywhere. And therefore, in the developed countries now, you don't find any new construction without reinforcement. So the masonry buildings are also reinforced. So that is basically to prevent the collapse. Now this is the third type of building that we considered. So this is Assam type wooden housing. So like I said, these are very peculiar type of buildings in this part of the country. If you move here in the northeastern part of our country, you will find such types of buildings everywhere. Most prominently in rural areas, but in urban areas also we have hundreds of years, more than 100 years old buildings which are still performing well. So several government offices are still functioning in these buildings. We have lot of residential buildings made of this Assam type wooden housing. So this is very commonly constructed here, and why these buildings are constructed, from where the idea came. So there was a very big earthquake in the 1800s in this region, where a lot of destruction took place. So in those days, the construction was primarily from stones. So then later people realized that wood is a better alternative material. So they started constructing these types of houses, and from their own experiences, they have now devised this technique, which is truly a marvel actually. So if I tell you some of the features of this building, so this is the wooden frame. So this is a bigger member which acts as the main post. So these two are the bigger members, and this is the top bigger member which is beam. And these are smaller members. So these are called vertical and horizontal stud members. So this is a frame, and here you have masonry infill wall. So the masonry is used here just to prevent the stray animals from entering the houses, to prevent the dampness inside the houses. So because of that, these people provide masonry wall only up to sill level. And these connections are achieved only with the help of nails and the connections that are there in the wooden members. So mortise connection, tenon type of connections, those connections are there. If you look at this bottom of these main post, it is actually supported over either a concrete pedestal or a masonry pedestal on both the ends. So these two ends are actually supported on concrete pedestal, and these ends are not similar. This connection here is different than this connection. So the difference is this connection actually has steel flats which are inserted into the concrete pedestal, and it does not allow rotation of these columns. So the steel flat is connected to the column post and inserted here. It does not allow rotation, whereas on the other side, the steel flat is provided in the other direction, so it allows the rotation. Now, when we asked these guys, like, who told you to do this, they had no answer. They just said that we know this type of building systems will perform better. These types of connections will perform better because in the same frame, you are resisting the rotation at one end, but you are not resisting here. So you are improving the flexibility, you are increasing the flexibility, but then you're also keeping a track on the stability, right? So stability is not reduced, but flexibility is improved. So that is the beauty of these houses. So this is, and there is no other connection here. Simply they use the brick bats here, compacted big bags over earth, and then they support these walls. Sometimes if the building is two-story, they can construct, they normally construct two-story houses, but some places you also have three-story houses. Now we considered in the present study 4 types of frames. So this is the first frame where there was no ICRA walls here, right? This is a bare frame. In the second frame, we provided ICRA walls. So these are these 6 panels. These are the ICRA wall panels. In the third frame, we have a central door, a central window opening, and in the fourth frame, we have a central door opening. And again, these are full-scale frames, so 3-meter width and 3-meter height. So the real material, real size of sections were used that are generally constructed on site. So everything was as similar as possible to the real house. And we prevented the out-of-plane movement of this frame using these lateral supports. Now the connection between these ICRA walls and these horizontal and vertical studs is also very interesting. Like I said, ICRA walls are made from bamboo shoots. So the interwoven bamboo shoots, they are actually simply inserted in these members by creating holes here. Right, so there are some holes drilled in this member, some holes are drilled in this member, and these bamboo shoots are inserted into these holes. That's all. So there is a groove here, and then the bamboo shoots are inserted. That is the connection. There is no other connection between the ICRA panel and the surrounding wooden frame. And let us see how these how these Assam type housing frames behaved. So this is the test setup, again very similar to the test setup that we have used for the previous two test specimens. So lateral load was applied using servo controlled hydraulic actuator at the top of the frame. Here we did not construct the RC frame at the top because the load of this frame will be too RC slab will be too high. So we used another arrangement to connect the frame with the actuator using these steel bolts. So now this the actuator can actually provide cyclic loading at the top of the building. These are the LVDTs that were used to record the response, lateral response. And you can see here these steel flats that I showed. You see here the difference in the steel flat and the difference in the steel flat. So in this case, these steel flats, they resist the rotation of this main post. But this steel flat here, it does not resist. It allows that rotation, but then the stability is still maintained. Now you can imagine that a big house, which will be having, let us say, 6 to 7, 8 rooms in that house. And every frame, you will have such type of arrangement. So every alternate post will be having a different type of connection at the bottom. So this is the concrete slab over which it was constructed, and this concrete slab was connected to the strong floor so that it does not undergo lateral displacement when we apply the loading. So this is the way we apply slow cyclic test to these houses, to these frames. We applied about 125 mm plus minus displacement at the top. 100 mm was the maximum that was applied on the RC frame. Here we applied 125, but then there was no damage to this frame. Marginal damage was there. So then we decided that let us apply more deformation. So in the first stage, we apply cyclic load up to about 125 mm. In the second stage, we applied monotonic test up to 500 mm. So monotonic means we keep on pushing this frame till failure. So we went up to 500 mm, half a meter, to see if this frame fails or not. So even after the application of half a meter of lateral displacement, the frame did not fail. So that is the beauty of the frame. Let us see how these frames perform. So I'm showing you this video here, which is for specimen 3 with window opening. And the setup, like I said, is very similar. This is the level where we are applying the lateral force. Not the lateral force, but the lateral displacement. And these are the LVDTs that are recording the lateral displacement. We also used strain gauges at the steel flats, on the steel flats here. Now I want to concentrate on this region, this joint. See, this member is not continuous. This member is of course having connection with these members at these locations. So the connection is, there is a groove in this horizontal stud, and there is a vertical member is actually inserted in the groove. So this is a tenon and mortise and tenon type of connection. It is inserted here, and then the ICRA panel that I already discussed, the bamboo shoots are inserted here. Okay, sorry, this is not mortise and tenon type of connection, but this is simple groove connection. Mortise and tenon connections are here at the ends. These are the mortise and tenon connections, but here it is not mortise and tenon. Here, you know, there are only grooves, and these members, the members are actually inserted in the grooves. So just pay attention what happens to these connections here, and you will be surprised to know how these buildings behave. So you can immediately start seeing the lateral deformation, and you can see some gaps here between the ICRA panel and the frame, wooden frame. You can see some failure here. Initial failure is in the masonry wall. Now can you see here what is happening? This entire part is actually sliding over this part. You can see some failure of the plaster here over the bamboo shoots. And see how freely this part of the wall is moving. So we have reached up to about 250 mm displacement. Now, the point that I wanted to make, let me again show here. So you can see what is happening here. This member was actually vertically aligned to this member. And now you can see where has this member moved, right? And you can see here the mortise and tenon type of connection free, completely free from this member. Here you see some failure in the masonry wall. The connection between the ICRA panel and the post is completely removed. And you can see here that these posts, the bamboo posts, which are inserted in the vertical post, in the holes created in the vertical post. You can see here that the interwoven bamboo shoots, which are used to make the ICRA wall, and this is the plaster. So there is so much of damage in the sense that the plaster is removed, the mortise tenon type of connections are removed, the connection between these walls are removed actually, but then there is no collapse, there is no stability problem, even after sustaining such damage. And it is actually unbelievable that there is a structure which deforms this much without collapse. So this should have been here, but it has actually moved by about 4 inches, 150 mm, 4 to 6 inches. So, and even more, and in the both directions, positive as well as negative directions. And you can see here the gap that is created between these ICRA walls, the masonry wall, and the wooden members in positive and negative both cases, right? So the enhance the better behavior of these buildings is shown here. So these are the, I'm sorry, these are the lateral load behavior, the hysteresis curves for the 4 specimens. So first is in which there was no ICRA wall. You can see again the gradual increase and reduction in the loads, displacement. It is very similar to the RC frame, but the lateral load is very less. Here you can see about 6 to 7 kilonewton, maybe 8 kilonewton in both positive and negative cases. Displacement is now increased to about 9%. Now, if you can remember, the displacement in case of RC frame was about 6%. Displacement in case of URM building was about 9 mm, 9 to 10 mm, and here we are talking about 9% displacement, 9% drift. So 9% drift, if the height of the building under the frame was 3 meters, it corresponds, 9% corresponds to about 270 mm. That is a huge number in this case. This is uh, the fully infilled frame where you have infilled ICRA walls in all the panels, and you can see the enhancement in the lateral strength to up to 22 to 23 kilonewton in both positive and negative push and pull directions. But because of the failure of different connections, you can see because of these failures, because of sliding movement, you have a very non-gradual lateral force deformation curve here. It is not like this, but because of these damages, because of this failure at different locations, this is. But then the surprising point is it has not reduced to zero like it was there in case of unreinforced masonry. It is still resisting the force. What is happening when one connection fails, another connection start resisting the load. After that failure, another connection start resisting the load. So that is what is happening here. Here there was a failure in one connection, but then the load increased. Another connection fails, it again increases. Some cracks in the infill, some cracks in the ICRA. The plaster was removed. Then failure of some connection. Then again it starts increasing the load. So this is how it behaves in case of lateral load. When we provide a window opening, the behavior, the lateral stiffness, lateral strength was more or less similar, slightly reduction in the lateral strength compared to the frame 2 here, but then the stiffness was more or less uniform, and again it went up to 9% drift. But when we provide a door opening, which is a larger opening, we could find that the behavior was not good. It actually failed drastically in a brittle manner. Okay, it only reached up to 7% drift, which was of course more than the drift achieved in case of RC frame, and much more than the drift achieved in case of the masonry building. But still, compared to other frames of the Assam type house, the frame with door opening performance was very poor. Now, reason here is the existing construction is done in such a way that these main posts are connected at the bottom with some concrete pedestal or brick pedestal, but these posts are not connected to the pedestal. They are simply inserted in the bottom brick bats or the concrete floor, simply like that. Proper connection is not there. So when we applied the lateral load, we found that these connections, these wooden members, they simply dislodged from their location. So therefore, the strength suddenly reduced in this case. So if I compare the four frames, you can find here that this is the frame 1, the bare frame, and these are the three other frames. So the lateral stiffness remains same more or less for the three frames, and the lateral strength for this frame, for frame 4, is lowest. It reduced drastically, but then for the other two frames the behavior was more or less similar. So there is not much influence of the window opening here, but there is a significant influence of the door opening. Like I said, since we could not fail the specimen in the cyclic test, we further carried out the monotonic test. So now you can see here that we tested the frames up to 17 to 18% lateral drift. And you can find here still in that case, this is the bare frame. The strength was not reducing at all. It was more or less constant. In the other frames, the strength started reducing at some location, but then they again started gaining the strength because there are so many connections, there are so many members, interlocking takes place. So these are the structural members which have very high deformability, but then the strength does not increase much after attaining the strength in the cyclic tests. Now the ability to undergo high lateral deformation without failure, that is the beauty of these houses, and the reasons for this ability is to have the flexible joints of the studs. So vertical and horizontal framing members, they had very flexible joints. The connection of the main post with the foundation was very unique, and the lightweight ICRA walls of the house. So you can see that the masonry wall at the below the sill level, it attracted damage in the very initial stage. But then the ICRA walls, the damage was of course there in the plaster, but at a later stage. So there was a significant influence of ICRA walls used as infills on the lateral strength, the stiffness, and the energy dissipation. So basically the overall lateral load behavior of these frames. Now the final type of building is confined masonry. So the primary difference between a confined masonry and reinforced concrete is this. In confined masonry, we construct the walls first, and then we uh, we pour concrete in these vertical elements, which are similar to the columns, but these are called the tie columns. These are not the regular columns, but these are tie columns. And finally, I mean, this construction is done stage wise. So up to this stage, the masonry wall is constructed, and then the column is casted. Then second stage up to lintel level, and third stage here. Finally, we construct the slab at the top. In case of RC, we all know that we construct the frame and the slab first, and then we insert the masonry wall. We can have different types of tie columns so that we have better connectivity. So here you can see that the concrete may be poured in such a way that it is inserted into the wall. So these are called toothing. So the uh, behavioral change in the lateral load deformation is very obvious, that because these members are very small, these are tie columns. So the primary role of these members is to tie the walls together, not to resist the vertical load or the lateral load. So all the loads, including the vertical gravity loads and the lateral loads, are resisted by the masonry walls. In case of RC building, all the loads are resisted by the RC beams and columns, but the masonry walls are provided only to fill the space as partitions. So this is the behavior that these walls behave. So this is a load bearing wall, this is the infill wall. This is basically the confined masonry system. It evolved through a very informal process after 1908 Messina earthquake, which is in Italy. So after this earthquake, these people observed that there is a huge failure in case of unreinforced masonry. So they wanted to have another construction typology so that the failure could be avoided. So since then it is practiced in Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and many other countries. In India, not formal construction is not common, but one formal large-scale application was done at IIT Gandhinagar campus, where they started constructing their faculty quarters and some hostel buildings using this a technique similar to confined masonry. So these are the properties of the models that were tested. Again, we tested 3 specimens. This is the specimen for aspect ratio 2. So you can see that the height of the specimen is much larger compared to the width of the specimen. So these are the 3 specimens that we tested. So this is the way we construct the confined masonry. So walls first, and then concrete later. And finally, we constructed the slab to provide the vertical load on this wall. These are the 3 specimens only. So this is for aspect ratio 2, this is for aspect ratio 1.5, and this is for aspect ratio 1. So you can see here the square panel. In this case, it was not square, but it was very slender wall. And so these 3 specimens were tested in a very similar type of test setup. This is the servo-controlled hydraulic actuator. These tests were carried out at IIT Patna. So I had a colleague there with whom I had a common project and a student. So the tests were carried out at IIT Patna. So this is the vertical load on the wall. Again, the setup to prevent the out-of-plane failure, and LVDTs were used to record the lateral displacement. And this is how the cyclic loading was applied here. And this is the slender specimen, specimen 1 with aspect ratio 2. So let us see how these specimens behave. So this is one video, and you can see that the behavior will be very similar to the masonry infilled frame, but with more damage in case of the columns, the tie columns. So since it is a very slender specimen, you can find that the cracks started appearing at the bottom, and now the X cracks are visible because of the cyclic loading, and the cracks also continued in the tie columns. So the displacement level is shown at the bottom like it was shown for all other tests, and now the crushing is observed at the bottom of the specimen in the brick infill, and this is how the basically the reduction in the strength up to about 50 to 60% took place. So this was before the test, and this is the specimen after the test. For this is the second specimen, and this is the third specimen. So you can see the difference in the behavior. So if the specimen is slender, you have distributed cracks here also, but then for square specimen you have the separation of the masonry wall from the tie columns, and then a lot of damage on the bottom side. And these are the lateral force deformation curves for this three specimens. So this is for AR2, aspect ratio 2, and this is for there's some problem here. The figures are not matching with the curve. So this is for aspect ratio 1. Sudden failure was observed. This for aspect ratio 1.5 and for aspect ratio 2. So you can see the load is about 50 kilonewton, 50 to 60 kilonewton. Here the load was slightly more, but the deformability is again here 4%, here about 6%, and here it was less. So it is the deformability is matching with reinforced concrete frames. The loads are slightly lower, the lateral strength is lower than the reinforced concrete frame, but the behavior, the cost of these specimens is much less compared to the reinforced concrete frame buildings. Now you can imagine here the behavior is not exactly matching with reinforced concrete frames, but it is comparable, even though we did not have the reinforced concrete columns. These are simple, very small tie columns. The size of the reinforcement detailing is very less, very minimum in this case compared to the normal RC columns. So this is the response of the three frames which are compared, and you can see here that the response of this blue curve is for which the aspect ratio was 1 was very good, and it was expected. We also saw the damage in this case was pretty good. So let us compare the lateral behavior that we obtained experimentally for the 4 building types. So it is not easy actually to compare the response, because these 4 were constructed in a different manner. The scaling was different, the material was different, the type of loading applied was different. So it is not easy to compare. So what we did not compare the direct strength, but we compared the normalized strength. So this comparative performance shows the normalized response of the curves, normalized response of the 4 specimens. So normalization is done such that the lateral load obtained experimentally was divided by the self weight of the frame, self weight of the structure, and then the comparison is done here. So you can imagine that the maximum weight was in case of URM building. So if I consider that, this is the normalized response. I hope you can see a very small curve. Here the mass of the infill, mass of the URM wall was very high, but its lateral capacity was very less. So that is why you have the normalized response very low. So this is for the solid wall. This is for the wall URM2, wall with door opening, and this is for the wall with window opening. So you can see small response, very small comparatively, very small normalized response for URM building. Now let us see how other buildings, other frames perform. So this is for the confined masonry aspect ratio 2.0. So of course you will have higher normalized response because the strength was much higher than the URM building, and though the mass was more or less comparable, and you can see the change in the deformability. It is very deformable. The confined masonry buildings have high ductility compared to the URM building. So this is for the second frame, which is having aspect ratio 1.5, and this is for confined masonry with aspect ratio 1.0. Okay, so all three specimens had better strength as well as much better ductility and deformability. This is for the Assam type bare frame. Now you can see how flexible these frames are. The stiffness is much lower, and you can see the deformability, the drift is much higher compared to all other frames. The strength is also much higher. The normalized strength is higher because the mass is very less. So when I normalize, the number becomes higher. This is for the infill frame, and this is for the window opening, Assam type 3, and this is for Assam type 4, which is with the door opening. Now you can see here that the comparison in the previous slide showed more or less similar performance, but because of presence of the opening, there was a reduction in the mass. So that is why there is a difference here. Now let us see what happens with the bare frame. So this is reinforced concrete bare frame. So you can see the lateral strength is much higher. The normalized response is much higher than all other frames. And look at the infill frame. So this is the reinforced concrete infill frame. Huge lateral stiffness and huge normalized strength compared to all other frames. This is because they had a comparable mass with the confined masonry building as well as unreinforced masonry building, but their lateral strength was much higher. But the failure was brittle. And this is with the opening. So here there are all the frames that were tested in the study. Now it's up to you. How will you decide which frame do you want? Now obviously the best curve are all these Assam type housing curve because they are so deformable, they are so high ductility. But even the bare frame is having very good response. These are the confined masonry frames which have very good response. The performance is much better than other frames. So without reinforced concrete columns, the behavior was much better than any other frames. Here you have big columns and therefore you have better behavior. So the concluding remarks, the masonry controls the seismic behavior of these building types. We have to actually uh, uh, consider the nonlinear behavior of the masonry in the design. Only then we'll be able to sufficiently consider its effect. The irregularities arising due to masonry we must avoid so as to improve the performance. And masonry can save the structure if we use it properly. So let me thank these 4 PhD students who actually carried out these 4 tests in their PhD studies. So Dr. Basha is presently Associate Professor. Ainsomong, Biswajit and Bonisha are now in the final stages of their work. So thank you everybody for patiently listening to the long presentation. Now I'm ready for any questions that you may have.
So if any one of you have any question, you can ask. So sir, I just wanted to know that the LVDTs which you have used, so how you have decided that location of where to place the LVDTs?
Very good question. So if you remember the figures, we used many LVDTs,
Yes, sir.
right, at different locations. So the reason was we were primarily interested in knowing the displacement at the top of the structure where the
Yes, sir.
loading was applied. But then how the column deforms, the figure, if you remember how the deformation profile is there, to record that we actually used at least 3 or 4 LVDTs and in equidistant locations. So
Okay,
one
sir.
was at the sill level, another was at the lintel level, and the top one was at the slab level.
So is it possible, sir, that after one experiment to reuse that LVDTs, or it get destroyed, something like that?
No, I mean these are very expensive LVDTs. Each one costs about 70,000-80,000 rupees.
Okay, sir.
So these are, I mean, we have been using these LVDTs for 10 years and they are so robust.
Okay, okay, sir. And also, sir, how you means like you have told that 800 type of housing, something like that, people construct in India. So how you
Not in
came
India,
to
in
study
northeastern part only.
in
In only
northeastern part only? Okay,
northeastern.
okay, okay. So how you came to study like chosen these four houses only means
See, out of 800 in northeastern part,
yes, sir.
only few are very commonly constructed in the region outside their own villages or talukas.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so if you find a housing typology in a village and it is not there outside the village, so there was no need actually to carry out such a detailed study on that.
Okay, okay, sir.
So these are the four most prominently constructed building types in India, which are basically classified based on use of masonry.
Okay, okay. And one more thing I just wanted to know, sir, that what is like temperature difference inside outside? Like if we see in an RCC building, while in summer it gets heated more than like are than masonry, if you say. So means in ICRA type of housing, what is the temperature difference or how it behaves in the high temperature region?
This is very better behave, much better behavior than the RC frame buildings because
Okay,
the construction requires these bamboo shoots throughout the walls, right?
okay,
Above the
sir.
sill level till the top of the building, there are bamboo shoots, and then they use mud plaster or even cement plaster. So there
Yes.
is a good thermal insulation inside the houses.
Okay. So okay, if anyone of else want to ask something, they can ask. Okay, sir. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture, and it was very great to see all the experiments which you have performed. And I hope it must will help all the students and all the participants for their future research, and also motivated us to study about all these things. So a big thanks from Civil Engineering Department, Jabalpur Engineering College, and I hope in future also, sir, you will give us opportunity to give lectures like that. Someone is asking, sir, one more question. Yeah.
Yes.
Behavior of frames if we have more number of floors. How frames will we have? Someone is asking actually, sir.
See, it is difficult to conduct laboratory tests on multi-story buildings.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so therefore, what we do as soon as there is an earthquake, we go to the place where earthquake is occurred to conduct the post-earthquake reconnaissance survey, where we actually see how big buildings have behaved during earthquakes, right? And on the basis of that only, we have been doing this research. Like these are the buildings which have performed poorly, like the open ground story building.
Yes, sir.
There are only a few places in the world where multi-story open ground floor buildings have been tested. Only two or three places in the world which have very big facilities, but it takes lot of money to actually maintain such a facility. We don't have in India such a big facility. Okay, but nature gives us this chance actually to visit the places and see how different buildings behave during earthquakes. So that is how we correlate the damages, the behavior with small scale tests done in the laboratory.
Okay, sir. One more question, sir. Someone is Shivam Dwivedi is asking how we can counter risk economically in open ground building. Is shear wall good option?
Yes, of course, shear wall is a very good option. If you want to have some place for parking, there is no need to actually have the entire story open, right? You can have certain places open in the ground floor for parking purposes. Other places you can have reinforced concrete walls which are continuously provided from the foundation till the top. If you only provide wall in the ground floor, that will not help. That must be there in the entire height of the building. Or another option, let us say there are buildings which are already constructed, and if you want to improve them, the simplest option is you fill some of the locations with infill walls, simple. But some foundation should be there for constructing the infill walls. So shear walls always help.
So one more question, sir. Most of the cases we are seeing ground floors are open. Then what are the preventive measures they are taking while the construction?
See, open ground floor buildings are always risky, especially in seismic zone 5, where I am sitting here in Guwahati. So here we experience an earthquake almost every month. These are not big earthquakes, so maybe magnitude 4, 3.5 to 4.5 magnitude. Now, in this region, it is very risky to have such buildings. But if you do small things like providing infill walls at some locations away from the center of the building, right? Providing shear walls in some places. So the idea is not to have the entire story open. Partial open is still better than having the completely open thing. So that is what
And
people are doing.
yes, sir. One more question, sir. I am just want to, in addition to that, like how we should choose the location of like masonry walls or shear wall if we are providing in a building.
For that, you need to do some analysis. You know, on a software, you go on providing walls at different locations and check
Yes, sir.
that the provision of the wall should not further incorporate torsion in the building.
Yeah.
Okay, that will further deteriorate the structural behavior. So what we have seen, when you provide these walls as far as away from the center of the building as possible. So in the exterior walls, you first provide in the exterior frames, you provide the walls, then you do analysis, then you try to see where else I can provide. So for using that analysis, you will be able to find out. The basic criteria is you should not incorporate torsion if
Okay.
you are providing these walls and shear walls.
That means placing at a symmetry position will be a good option, and
Yes,
also away from the center of the building.
yes.
Okay. One more question, sir. Someone is Jivendra Singh is asking if the base of building is flexible, then how building will react?
So that is what happens in the open ground story building. The base is very flexible. When you have infill walls in the upper floors, that becomes very stiff. All these upper floors, they become very stiff. But infill wall, when it is not there in the ground floor, it becomes very flexible. So if you remember the figure in my presentation where I compared the three curves, most of the lateral deformation is accumulated in the ground floor itself.
Ground floor. Yes, sir.
And that is the reason that these columns fail.
Okay. So one more thing I just wanted to ask that if suppose an old masonry building is there, so how we can strengthen it against to increase its earthquake resistance?
There are many ways to strengthen unreinforced masonry buildings. I mean, if there are some design guidelines, some codes are also there. You can see Indian standard. There are some methods available using which you can improve. But the problem with these existing methods in Indian codes is that they will not tell us how much increase in capacity will be achieved.
Okay.
They will simply say that you provide a reinforced concrete band here, you provide this plaster here, this FRP there, but then how much increase in strength is required, is achieved, that is not given. So we are doing some research here on very simple strengthening scheme that I showed you the figure where the steel bands are provided at
Yes,
different
sir.
locations of these buildings. So
Okay.
we are actually providing the design equations as well for
Okay.
these for this method. But if you are constructing a new building, the best way to delay the failure or to avoid the failure is to provide concrete bands at different locations, sill level, lintel level, floor level, and then provide reinforcement at all the corners, the vertical reinforcement, and near the openings.
Okay. So one more question Nagamohan is asking, like in confined masonry testing, why we have not considered the external load on remaining cases? Like in confined masonry, we have seen that on slab you have put some weight on there. So in other cases, that was not there. So
It was there in every case
okay,
except
sir.
the Assam type house, Assam type frame.
Okay, sir.
I showed you that in the even in the RC frame there was a slab. The slab was
Yes, sir.
constructed basically to support the load.
Okay, sir.
So in unreinforced masonry as well, there was a load, but in case of Assam type house, there was not that load because we could not construct the slab there.
Okay, sir.
And anyway, the load on the Assam type frame coming from the top floor is very less.
Yes, sir.
That is why we did not consider that load there.
Sir,
And
one more.
what I have shown today is only testing of single frames.
Yes, sir.
In IIT Guwahati, we have a facility where we can test the full-scale buildings, single story. So the unreinforced masonry, the confined masonry, the Assam type house, we have tested full house specimens, right? So that study we have already done, but because of time limitations, I cannot show you all those results here. So I'm just showing you today only the frame results.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your lecture, and I hope that all the participants have definitely enlightened with your lecture. Thank you, sir. A big thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
And if anyone has any more questions, they feel free to contact me on my email.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Till the end.